Welcome to Shut Up and Sit. I'm Yedda Stansel, a consciousness coach and consultant. I'm on a mission to bring mindfulness to the modern world. Each week, we will offer ancient healing practices, real-world examples, and the latest research in neurobiology and behavior change into fun conversations. All right, welcome back to the show. As always, you know what I'm going to say, Yedda here. And man, how exciting to be here today for, again, lots of reasons. One of the reasons I'm excited is because I am sitting next to the great Willie McKinney. Willie, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad to be here with you. You always make me smile. I just look at you and I smile. And that makes me excited. And the other reason I'm excited is, Willie, we are working our way into chapter 9 in the book, Shut Up and Sit. Gratitude is the goal, you all. If you have your copy, you're following along, or if you're on the course, it's the last chapter in the book. It's kind of unbelievable to think there have been over 40 some episodes of recordings of teachings on this capacity. And none of this was in existence when you and I started doing our work and you started doing the work that was in the book.
That's right.
So I'm excited to just be here with you and see the manifestation of everything that's happening in both our lives. But to be here on the show, to have you impart your wisdom, to have you come back, but to know, and for you all watching and listening, Willie's testimony is actually in chapter 9. And all of my clients whose testimonies are in the book were thoughtfully actually placed. They were partnered with the topic that you all are learning. And I can't think of anybody more grateful, even when we started to do the work together, Willie, as you. And the grateful heart that you've always, always had. And it's one of the things that connected us when we first met.
That's right.
You just had this really grateful heart, this great big grin, and this amazing ability to just help people feel good. And I have to say this about Willie. We actually met at a workout facility at a gym here in town. And every time Willie would walk into the gym, people would say, Willie! And I'm like, who is this Willie character? Nobody goes, Yedda!
I don't know what I did to deserve that, but.
Well, look at you. You know what it's just you. It's the essence. And so you are such a grateful soul and so full of gratitude. They see me and they go running. They're like, she's going to talk about shit we don't want to mess with or deal with. And so we got partnered up on some exercises at the gym and just started chit-chatting and talking and got to be really good friends and then ended up having a chance to work together. And so it was your gratitude and your grateful heart and your smile that people picked up on and sensed. And the very first conversation, I think we were doing a plank hold in some ridiculous exercise where we had to reach up and clap hands while we were in plank and complaining and commiserating, but you still had a grin the whole time through.
It was so painful.
It was painful. I agree with you on that. And so it's so glad. I'm just so glad to have you come in today. And you've been through this work. You and I obviously got to be in more of a professional relationship after we met on a personal level. But before we jump into all of that, I'm curious. Tell us a little bit about who Willie is, and you can start wherever you want. Although I said that to my mom, and she goes, "Well, when I was born," and I'm like, "Oh God, no, I'm kidding."
Yeah. So who Willie is, I think a great example is the text I sent you earlier today. Like, can you give me a list of the questions that I'm going to be asked? I like to be prepared, but who am I? I am
Which I didn't give him the questions, you guys. He came in here just like a little duck out of water and was like, come on, sit down. You know the title of the show, Shut Up and Sit.
No questions, none. I am a family man, currently now a businessman, a scientist by training, a mentor, a plethora of things. So that's how I view myself.
Yeah. And a lot of those things that you just talked about are lots of identities, lots of roles that you play, hats that you wear, faces, masks. We use all these languages in coaching. And so when you think about Willie and you think about the work that you do and what you now offer out into the world, what would you say you're offering the world?
It's interesting. One of my clients told me that I offer peace of mind.
I love that.
She had a very challenging situation. She received a letter from FDA and she just did not know what to do. And so she called our team And when we started working, she said, I had my first good night's sleep knowing that you guys are doing work.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what's interesting? So you offer people peace of mind. I would agree with that. And that's, again, why you're in the gratitude chapter. It's by design. But this ability to offer people peace of mind, when we first started working together, would you say you had peace of mind?
I think you know the answer to that one.
Yeah, but our listeners and viewers don't.
I know. No, I was not in a good space. I was not my true self. I was stressed most days, but not stressed because of the work, but stressed because of emotion, fear, anger. And so it was taking its toll on me mentally and physically.
Yeah. And so, you don't have to get into all the details, but I'm curious, can you elaborate a little bit on what was contributing to a lot of that fear and that emotional, what I would use, my coaching language is dissonance, which means there was kind of a rub. Things weren't in alignment, right? There's resonance. You're a scientist, you know that in the body and the brain. There's resonance, which means things are working together in alignment. And then there's dissonance or discord or distance. And so there was some dissonance going on for you. And so I'm curious, what was causing some of that?
Well, I think some of our listeners will understand when I say one word, corporate America.
Yeah.
There were some challenges as you move up the ladder. It becomes more political. And then, of course, there are racial situations and and microaggressions and things like that you have to deal with. And quite frankly, I just wasn't dealing with that environment very well.
Yeah. And you were in a scene and in a situation in corporate America, and I'm glad you bring that up. And I want to be really clear, and you know this, my listeners, my viewers know this, and we're going to be teaching. I mean, people are going to be watching this to learn from this, is we have belief systems and structures that exist all over the world. And yes, they also exist in corporate America.
Yep.
And so both of us sitting here today are what we would be classified as minority. And so our corporate America systems and structures are built on a lot of belief systems. Lots of belief systems serve them, and some of them actually hold back and don't serve and don't help. And so this dissonance that you're talking about, and it's why I love teaching this work, is behaviors and beliefs are directly and completely connected to and impact the bottom line of everything. And that is corporate America, not just our lives, but our business.
Yep.
And so there are systems and structures. And of course, when we started doing our work together, this was pre-COVID.
Yep.
Now, I mean, I can't even imagine. I mean, now we're talking all of COVID has happened, the breakdowns, the racial, the public health. I mean, you name them. We've been just pinged on every level to tear down belief systems by external forces.
Yep.
And so we're talking today, and you and I talk about a lot of this in our sessions, but also as friends now, that there is a rising up, there is a voice, there is a belief system that wants and desires equality. It's always been there. It's just more vocal now.
That's correct.
And we're hearing that, and it's something that I've been passionate about. And I don't know that before, when we worked together, Willie, I would have used this language or explained it this way. But now we're still facing with COVID stuff, but in the COVID wake, and of course with George Floyd and all of the political uprising and all of our issues that are breaking down literally around us, we couldn't be more in need of understanding how we think, feel, behave, how beliefs are created, how they need to be deconstructed, how they can be rewound, rewritten, rewired literally in the brain and the psyche. All of beliefs is what drives all human behavior. And that's literally when you first came to me and said, what did you say to me at the gym?
I hope I understand what you're asking. I asked, what do you do?
Yeah. And what was my response to you?
I don't even remember your response because it was so nebulous.
I hate that question. I'm always like, how do you explain to somebody, I practice this, you all. I'm like, well, should I say I rewire people's brains? What do I do? And so ultimately, and this was a few years ago now, when you asked me that, I used to hate that question, because we were in an era where if I brought all that out and unpacked it, people either look at me like cross-eyed and crazy,
right,
or they run the other way, or the very few would be like, well, that sounds interesting. Let's talk about that. And so I didn't give you a real clear-cut answer because we were in an era where those worlds hadn't really crashed together.
Yeah.
And now what I'm excited about, and I mean this with the greatest sincerity, sympathy, empathy, and compassion, all of what's happened in our world to break all these infrastructures down is inviting ways for us to start talking about beliefs, behaviors, bottom lines of business. Who we are as people is who we are as professionals. And that's one of the areas that we spent a lot of time talking about, was what belief systems are at play consciously and unconsciously for you and the people you work with. We're all just operating on beliefs, patterns, habits. Yeah. And how was that for you to dig into that and get permission? Because if I had said, well, I do executive coaching, and then on the first session I had pulled out the let's talk about the brain and all of the, now the scientist in you loved that and got it. But the guy at the gym probably would have been like, I don't know if I want to work with her. That doesn't sound fun.
Well, you piqued my curiosity. I'm a curious person by nature. And I would say also, you mentioned some names of some people that had written books that I'd read. But when you talked about them, you talked about walking on a path with them or going to visit them. And I thought, okay, there's some depth here, and clearly and this
crazy girl might actually know what she's talking about. Right. Yeah. And I'm always really careful about, do I want to bring up the the name dropping. I have been really privileged to sit at the feet of several masters and learn, and our listeners and viewers have heard that along the way. And I know when now to share that, and especially with you, to share the validity. But it's interesting because even our own belief systems, when I look back at that conversation, were at play. Here we are, two minorities, and I'm name dropping what I would call majority teachers in a space to give us both permission and freedom to give us validity for who we are and the work that we do. And now when somebody says to me, well, Yedda, what do? Do you want to know what I say?
What do you say?
I say, I don't really know, but it's a great question. Would you want to sit down and talk about it? And I don't feel the need to bring in anything until I've had a chance to really connect with the individual. And I've done that recently and picked up quite a few clients, because then that's a whole level. What do you mean you don't know? Now, some people are like, whatever, I'm going to work with her. Because what I've realized is you can't put into a sentence or a tagline this work, what I do, what we do when we dive into the inner being, the inner depths of our psyche is a very sacred and very spiritual space, but it's also necessary in all walks of life. And before COVID, we couldn't marry those two worlds. It was very siloed off, and nobody talked about, we could talk about our home life, but you know this in corporate America, we didn't talk about what did you do, what was life like, how did that implement or actually impact anything, what was going on at work. They were two separate worlds. And now we're seeing, at a meeting the other day with a gentleman whose 2-year-old was on the floor behind him, the executive. That's right. And we're seeing behind the curtain, and the lines have gotten muddied. And so there is an uprising where we're breaking down things, but our voices are now being heard in different ways. So I love this question now. So if you had come up to me at the gym today, if I'd seen you, I would have been like, I got no clue. I'm still trying to figure it out, but I'm having a lot of fun doing it. You want to sit down and just chat? And that turns into a very different experience for me and my clients. But let's go back. So you and I decide we are going to just sit down and talk a little bit more. And I told you about some of the people I had worked with, and you were like, wow, I read some of those books. I know those people. And so we sat down and really started to dig into some of what I would call suffering, the suffering you were experiencing in corporate America.
Yep.
And what was that like for you to really bring those worlds together? Because you're a scientist by nature.
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing that happened was I just wanted you to agree with me. I wanted you to see what I saw and tell me that, yeah, you're right, they need to change. But honestly, you never did that, which is good. And I'll say, too, in the beginning, there was no way, if you had told me, that I could have pictured the journey and where we would end up. But yeah, we started working together, and I started explaining. And one of the things you told me was hold the mirror up to myself, and I did that.
Yeah.
But then I still said they need to change. Yeah. It took a while, I think.
Well, that victim mindset was something that would, just to call that out loud, and that the awareness of knowing when are we in the victim story and the victim mindset, and how do we break free? And we talked a lot about, and this is what this work is in this book, is you get what you believe. And when you show up and believe something, which is I'm not worthy of being invited to the table, or
Yep.
whatever belief system you carry, guess what you do? You lead and show up in an unconscious way that tells people to treat you the very way that you believe. And that's a limiting belief.
Yep.
And that's what we worked on for you, was getting out of the victim language and story and moving into the victor. How does somebody show up and lead from a position of power? And I say power from an internal empowerment power. And I know you've worked with a lot of great leaders, even in corporate America. It's not all bad. It was a different way for you to learn how to show up, though. And when you showed up empowered, what happened to everything and everyone else around you?
Yeah, well, I went to a different company and encountered basically the same situation. But I handled the situation a lot differently. And therefore, the outcome was different.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not an aggressive individual. I would say calm and confident. And that now comes across. And can I talk about what I'm doing now?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I started a consulting firm. And
which, by the way, was just was it even an idea when we first started working together? Because you were in the corporate world on climbing a really high ladder and had achieved a lot of success.
Yeah. No, I didn't have any intentions of leaving, even with the suffering.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I did leave.
Yeah. And what was that like for you when you decided to make that decision that you were going to go out and be an entrepreneur and take all your value and step into a different place of offering it to the world?
Well, you got to trust. I would say the first few nights I didn't sleep very well, because you wake up like, okay, got to make some income. I need to eat. I need to feed the family. And then you just put a plan together. Once you start putting a plan together, you're working and you start executing the plan and things start happening.
Yeah. When you get what you believe, and I say that a lot, and you know that in our work together, so you learned a lot through going through the Shut Up and Sit work, which when you went through it, I would send you worksheets and links to things to watch. So the process of it, this book hadn't actually been in physical form created yet. It was a process I used.
Right.
But as I was working with you, I was also working with an editor and a lady to help me in, because I thought, I should probably put this together. I'm saying a lot of the same things, teaching a process or a system, but it was a different system in the sense of it was teaching you how to go within and figure out who you are, what your beliefs are, and the thinking, feeling, behaving process of, are these beliefs I want to keep? Are these some beliefs I might want to rewind, rewrite, kind of rewire and respond differently in the world? And you also learned the power of mindfulness. So I'm bringing that in because as you were going through that, what happens is people, and I say this all the time when clients bring me in, I'm like, either people coach themselves up or out. And I see it, and it's fine, wherever you are in this work, I'm not saying you change in your entire life. You're still who you are, but your belief systems actually begin to manifest and create in different ways. So when you do the internal work, it has a direct impact on the external, right? The outer world is a direct reflection of the inner world. So you already had some great habits and gratitude, but you also did the deep dive to figure out, how do I walk in a room and give myself permission to be smart, successful, powerful, and say, I have value that I can contribute to this experience just like everybody else. And we were able to connect on knowing those limiting beliefs because as minorities, it's an unspoken limiting belief that we've just been raised with. And that's dangerous territory to say, wait a minute, you want me to step out in the middle of broad daylight and shout to a world that hasn't necessarily given me belief systems to say, I'm empowered, Yedda, and tell the world I'm empowered. And I said, yeah. And when you do the inner work, you then can take the leap to go, I'm going to do the outer work, and I'm now going to go create my own business, my own consulting firm. That's huge, Willie.
Yeah. Honestly, I think limiting beliefs are being challenged worldwide. If you look at the Olympics, these small countries now are starting to win gold.
Yeah.
You look at the women's gymnastic team and the makeup of that team. And there was a young lady recently who won a spelling bee, and she also plays basketball, and she's pretty doggone good. So the limiting beliefs are being challenged all over the place. And young people are seeing people that look like them doing amazing things.
Yeah, yeah. And I agree with you. And it's something I'm super passionate about in this space. It's always been there for me as a behavior change specialist. And, I did some reflecting recently, and I went all the way back to one of my very first certifications as a behavior change specialist. It sounded so fancy that long ago. And I went back and revisited some of the content, and that's really the core of my work. And I think I told you that was, the understanding how behavior is built, how to change behavior, but then moving into the business world and going into that leadership space. To me, there was no connection.
Yeah.
We talk about behavior change, and even to this day, if you go Google behavior change, you're going to see things from the American Council on Exercise, or you're going to see it in a physiological nutrition, exercise, like a very scientific, that stays over here, but we can't get into the societal and the culture norms and all the other constructs over here. And to me, I thought, but they all touch each other. And as a society, what you mentioned, societal norms are just collections of belief systems.
Yep.
And when we get into, you and I do talk about this, and I'm going to bring this up because we're going to have some corporate clients watching this. We are talking about gratitude, and I am so grateful for all of my work and my clients' works. But where we are in a world now, when challenging things like limiting beliefs are being challenged, the next question is, what opportunity do we have to rebuild new belief systems? What if we built new belief systems based on gratitude and enoughness and all these words in mindfulness of I'm enough, and nothing about how you look, how you engage, what you think, feel, or do defines who you are. It's your humanity that defines who you are. That's a social norm that does not exist currently. It's in pockets and parts and pieces. But I believe we're now being called to, and I would love for, if I walked away from my work at all and looked back, what I would want to be known for is to help people wake up, to do the work to go within and find their wounds and know that there's wisdom there and that they could come out into the world and contribute to a new social norm of similarities, of inclusion, of love, of kindness, joy, equanimity that really transforms the world. Yep. That's the work I really am called to, and my clients are called to.
Yep.
And you know this because I work with all different colors, size, shapes, genders. But that's really at the core. I've kind of evolved and woken up, and I said, if there's anything I want to be known for in a sense of how I could contribute to the healing of the world right now, it's exactly that whole justice, equity, diversity, inclusion place of we need the tools to now step in and go, it's a mess. We've got, the shit is broken everywhere. How do we step in? And it's all of us doing the work like you and the rest of us stepping in and saying, well, here's what I know. And we've just got some belief systems, and now let's pick it up and rebuild it and build a new belief system that's going to serve all of us, not just some of us.
Agreed.
Yeah. And that's where I think the minority conversation, the voice, somebody said to me, one of my teachers said a few weeks ago, he said, COVID has given us the ability as minorities to really practice speaking and having our voices heard, because for so long we haven't been heard at the level we're now being heard. And that's across all different spectrums. And that's not to threaten or scare anybody, it's to invite people. Come sit down with us. Let's rebuild this together.
Yeah. I think COVID did something else. When I was working with you, I would say I was like a fish in water. I was in the water, and it was just, that's the way it is. And so my beliefs were functioning. Corporate America was functioning the way it was functioning. But I learned to be quiet and look and observe and almost take myself out of the water, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And I think COVID actually forced a lot of people to step back and say, what am I doing? I'm on like rote memory. I'm just going through life. So it was a reset.
Yeah. Pattern interruption.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when we get that, we get a whole new opportunity to show up and do things differently.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So with that pattern reset that you experienced in our work together, and, again, what I love, and you talked about your business, and I have to hold this up for those of you that are on video, and I know this as an entrepreneur, what this means. So when Willie came in today, he brought me a water bottle, and I thought, well, honestly, when you were like, here, I brought, and it was in a box, I saw a water bottle, I was like, God, I get so many of these. People give me water bottles all the time. And I was like, okay, well, let me do. So Willie, why'd you bring me a water bottle? And I pulled it out of the box. And there is, and Robin can kind of check that out, there is a logo that's on the front of this water bottle. It's no ordinary water bottle. This is a really special water bottle. It says McKinney Regulation Science Advisors, LLC. And that's your new business.
That's correct.
In real living color, in true manifested form, you now got swag. That's what we call this, right? You got swag, right? You got a water bottle, you got all kinds of stuff. So you've manifested, you've moved beyond the limiting belief. And I'm not saying everybody has to leave corporate America to do that. There's value in all of our roles and all of our growth and our journey and our wisdom and our wounds. When you get to the place where you were, you saw an opportunity to step even further out and say, there is need and there is value that I have. And the belief systems you had been cultivating through this shut up and sit work was, I remember you saying, like, how do you do that? What do you do?
Yeah.
How do you start and I remember being in that same place. How do I start a coaching and consulting company? And as an entrepreneur, I love the idea of manifesting. And so this is big, to step out in the unknown and commit to all that there is and say, I want to do something with who I am and my beliefs and my values in a way that impacts the world. So tell me a little bit about what this process is like for you. What's life like to wake up now and have healthy beliefs that propel you forward instead of limiting beliefs that keep you stuck in the victimhood of the past?
Well, I will say that I have more healthy beliefs than non-healthy beliefs. But I tell you, when I started on this journey, it still felt like a hobby thing. Like, okay, I'm going to play around with this for a little bit. And even during COVID 2020, it was such a phenomenal year. This year I said, okay, I probably need to build some infrastructure. I can't keep up, so I need to find some more people to help. And things have just been taken off. And I think I've finally now, let me put it this way, I can see something bigger. I'm starting to see that. But before it was a day by day.
Yeah. And I say this sometimes to clients is like living with Vaseline on your eyes, right? Like you can't really, you keep rubbing, right? And then all of a sudden, and this is so great. And I'm, you know me, guess my hobbies are, I read about this stuff. I'm in it 24/7. People are like, what's your hobby? I'm like, I don't understand the question because this is what I do. But I was reading the other day, and Willie, you know this about me. I read like 6 books at once, and we talk a lot about our books and our reading. And as I was reading, I was really kind of just jumping into this whole space of what the writer said was, we always have, it's so easy to believe something when we look back and we have 20/20 vision.
Right.
And I don't care if you talk about in work, in life, in health, in religion, especially she talked about religion. And while this was a big one, I have to segue for a second. She said, it doesn't matter what saint or sage you follow, but she brought one in and she said, if you walked up on the Sea of Galilee today, and you saw Jesus teaching, and you had no resurrection, you had no crucifixion, would you follow him and why? And the point of the question was, we rely so much on hindsight to have the ability to move forward. And so faith, and I don't care if you're whatever spiritual teacher you're talking about, all of it's in hindsight. And we have so much that we look back on, which is great. But the ability to then look forward is that faith and that belief in the unknown. And so I really think that the entrepreneurial journey, that's that step of crossing that threshold into the unknown.
Oh, yeah.
That we don't get taught in school in the formal capacity of business. And so you stepped into the unknown once you stopped the archaeological dig and you got right and you realized, well, where'd all this come from? Right. Some of it was your belief system, some of it was ancestral, some of it was societal. And you start to tease it apart. Then you get the freedom on the inside to begin to dream and wake up and see something different.
That's right.
And your outer world, I said this all the time on my episodes and with my clients, is a direct reflection of your inner world. You take me into someone's office or someone's home or into their community, and I can tell you a lot about their inner world when I witness and watch what's the outer world look like. And so then this process of manifestation is, you want to create an idea in the outer world, you got to first create it on the inside.
Yep.
So this water bottle, and it's not trite. It's a representation that all the inner work you were doing is now able to come out into the outer world and show up and make a difference. And I love that. And I love and it requires a lot of gratitude, a lot of beliefs, and there's more right than wrong in me and in the world. And it's a lot of trust and a lot of faith.
It definitely is a lot of trust and a lot of faith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you got to wake up every day and you got to dig into it and you got to call on it over and over and over and over again. So if you didn't have the ability to shut up and sit, to practice the ability to pause and go within, do you think you could have done the work to be where you are today?
Let me answer that a couple of ways. Number one,
I would expect that you are a scientist.
I couldn't have accomplished what we accomplished alone. I couldn't see. However, as we went on our journey, my belief system changed. I began to see the world differently. And as I said, I learned how to pause and how to, okay, what's going on here? Why am I having these feelings? What's the real reason?
Yeah, what are the thoughts underneath that are creating, and most of us aren't aware of what we're thinking.
Absolutely. So I challenge myself constantly. And so in doing that, let's talk about the fear of starting a business. You wake up in the morning and you think, oh boy, this isn't going to happen. And then you realize, let's be present. That stuff hasn't happened. Mm-hmm. And guess what? We're going to get up, we're going to do stuff, and the stuff you think is going to happen is not going to happen.
Because you're writing a story that you're not even there. It's like you can't handle the future.
Right.
And this is something else that you're making me think of. I just want to add this. We always look back and go, if you would have told me then that this is where I'd be now. And what I loved that this author said, the reason you didn't know then where you would be now fully is because you probably would have kept yourself from actually getting there.
Yep.
Because we do have this fear deep down inside of us, this part of us that didn't get its needs met or didn't get taught the skills. How many of us were raised with belief systems to operate as gratitude as a default?
Yeah. No, you're right.
And that's the work that you did.
That's absolutely right. The past is the past. I used to worry about things I said and what did people think. It's like, well, that wasn't my best performance, but it's all good.
Yeah.
And the future, honestly, is not promised. You can't control it. So live in the present.
Yeah. And what's the power of the present moment giving you right now?
I would say, I have more control over me, more control of the way I view situations, the way I react. Admittedly, though, given my brain the way it works, I'm always thinking ahead, so I could be talking to someone and squirrel, I'm off, but I know
I do that too. I've thought of a few things while you were talking today, and I brought myself back.
Exactly. You gently bring yourself back to the present. So.
Yeah, no, and what's great about that, and I do want to talk about this too, because this is a lot of what we talk about individually is the empowerment of being here, right now, and it is true, this is where all freedom lies, on the inner world. And I do know that we're still fighting some battles on the outer world for true equality and true empowerment, and that is coming and that is changing, and we're all doing our part on that. And I, there's this space around this work that I do have some people along the way who've asked this, Willie, who've said, well, that's great, Yedda. You're able to be empowered because, you have certain things that play to your advantage. And so when you think about people who have a belief system that say, the cards aren't set up to work for me, the system is rigged, so Yedda, you can have all of the empowerment techniques you want to teach me, and that's great. When people ask you now, why should I do the work if it's not going to change the way the world is treating me or seeing me? What would you say the value of this work is?
See, that's why I wanted the questions beforehand.
No, I wanted you.
I'm a thinker.
No. This is shut up and sit, because then it's there. I don't want you to overthink it.
It's a great question.
I'll give you a minute. I'll fill it in. You want me to tell you a joke or tap dance or laugh a little bit?
No. So first off, one of the things that I've learned is, and we talked about this, my reaction can manifest the outcome. Mm-hmm. So even if
impact it. So, okay, things aren't the way I want them to be, not in my favor.
I'm going to take the lemons and I'm going to make lemonade because I'm smart enough and I'm powerful enough to do that.
Yeah.
I'm going to get where I need to be. I just may have to take a different path or react a different way. And that's the way I'm viewing. It's not a victim mentality. It is a empowered mentality.
Yeah, and what you're bringing me up to is just kind of thinking about this conversation of, and I've evolved this since we've done our work together on this language of shut up and sit. And you can imagine, especially like in corporate or out in the world, people are like, did you just say shut up and sit, Yedda? And I said, yeah. And the language that I've arrived at, and all my clients, it's a reciprocity. We help each other. We're all growing and evolving. I don't have something that you're missing. And, and I learn from my clients learn from me. We're all giving and taking from our wisdom and our wounds. And so this language for me, especially for minorities, shut up and sit is a language that has been used for most of us as minorities as a form of punishment.
Yeah.
Shut up, sit down, play it safe, disappear. Nobody wants you. You don't have value unless you are this, or this. Okay. And I know I speak to it from my perspective of being a female. And, there is this language, and I wrote about it in the book, but it's why I used shut up and sit, is teaching people, I didn't say this to you when we did our work, it's been an evolution, but teaching people to take belief systems that are not theirs, that are given to them by others who are taking power in order to have power.
Yep.
And saying, because I remember this, I remember saying, wait a minute, I've got to shut up and sit down and get quiet and go within and revisit the very thing that has been used to silence me, to free me. That's crazy. And I remember thinking that, and so this language and this shutting up and sitting, and my story, it's in there, and my dad being Marine, and a lot of the language of shut up and sit, but also in the world, hearing as a woman, shut up and sit down, and in the business world. And so the minority belief systems are different than the majority.
Yep.
And there's a lot of self-referral and a lot of self-management and really survival belief systems that we're learning to let go of. And so the shutting up and sitting was the freedom for me and for all of my clients. That's why I add this to all the work. We can analyze your thoughts and your brain and get into all the science, but where's the freedom and where's the gap and where's the space to say, what other story can I step in and create? One of gratitude, one of love, one of inclusion. It does exist. Even if the only evidence you get that you matter and that you belong is going out in nature, and all of existence, just its energy saying, Willie, you matter. Yedda, you matter. And so now I'm asking that question, but I'm also sensitive, and I'm helping myself and my clients answer that question, whether they're on the minority or majority end of the conversation, to bring this teaching and this language in to say, we all matter. We all have value. We all can contribute. And if we can operate with that belief system, the whole gratitude landscape, it's not just some facade to wake up and go, oh, you just need to be grateful. We would operate from a belief system of gratitude, which would be our go-to, which creates connection and inclusion and love and belonging and joy versus separation, exclusion, attack, and harm, and really that leads to violence. And so there is a point, this is where I'm leading up to in the work, and you've done this with your business, there is a point where you do have to stand up and speak.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you stand up and I say stand up and be, stand up and speak, stand up and lead. These are kind of my new 3 kind of like prongs off of helping people. It's not just shut up and sit down forever. You do that for a deep season, and then you do it ongoing, but then you learn whatever you're finding in here, you can stand up and you can go out in the world. But you speak with a matter that, as minorities, you and I have talked about this, we've learned the value of invitation. We hold a belief system to invite people into experiences because that's how we've had to survive.
Yep.
And so as we're kind of thinking about this work, and you're at the end of the book for lots of reasons, and I want to leave people at the mountaintop here in the book and even on our show as we kind of begin to wrap up, is what does it look like to you as you do kind of survey where we're headed as a society and world, thinking about operating with a different belief system of victor, not victim, to stand up and speak in the world as a minority? What does that future look like for you?
Well, I think if that happens, minorities actually challenge their belief systems, that communities will benefit, society will benefit. I think people will stop functioning from a protection mechanism, And it will be quite powerful. Mm-hmm. And I hope it happens.
Yeah, I do too. And, we don't know if it'll happen or how far in the future it will happen in our lifetime, in our kids' lifetimes. But I do know this, the work that you're doing, the work that I'm doing, the work that we're all doing, shutting up, sitting, going within, learning. I honestly think, and you've heard me say this, when we first started working together, I wasn't using that kind of inner MBA, but this really is a mindful mastery of behaviors and aspirations that is all about belief systems.
Absolutely.
And if and it's okay, if you haven't learned this, it's fine, you're learning it now. Could you imagine, though, a world where we are waking up, belief systems are falling down, new things are coming in play, but we actually raise children from a small age that see everything as we're all the same.
Yep.
Differences are there, but what if we operate from that similarity space, that what's in me honors and sees what's in you? And that's a place that only gratitude can take us. And I love, as you guys are going into chapter 8, and you're really chapter 9. I get them all confused, Willie. We're coming out of chapter 8, going into chapter 9 with gratitude. There's a great TED Talk in here. I love it. If you guys haven't watched it, by all means, it's the video, if you remember the filmmaker, and he put together that gratitude video, and there's the voiceover on it of what real gratitude is. And he says something in here, and he really alludes to it, is just that we protect what we fall in love with. And gratitude, and this whole work, we end on gratitude, because if you can fall in love with you, you will protect you. And that love and that ability to contain and hold all of your own experience, and I do this just to really hold yourself, will show up in the world and not need to take anything from anyone else. You'll just see, your overflow just gives. That's what gratitude is. So as we begin to wrap up, I'm curious, what's your gratitude practice like these days? What do you do to just really tap into gratitude?
Well, I will say that I am exercising again.
Yes, good.
Bike riding and taking a 3-mile walk every now and then. But also in the morning, I take a quiet moment. Mm-hmm. I sometimes challenge myself how long I can just focus on my breathing without thinking about what I'm going to do during the day. That's kind of fun for me. I'm not very good.
That's
my mind
right.
automatically goes to what I'm going to do, and then I realize I'm like, dog it, try again tomorrow.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are the things that I think that I do.
Well, and that's what I love about this work is, you guys, it can show up in all different ways. So whether you have a gratitude walk, a gratitude sitting practice, you're taking care of your physical body, as well as anybody else that's done this work, what's happening. There's so many other things happening inside your body when you're taking care of yourself, when you're grateful and loving yourself. I really think that gratitude should just be called love. That's really what it ultimately is. When we are in a place of gratitude, love is present in a very conscious form, and that's for ourselves.
That's right.
So I hear you're doing that. You're taking care of yourself. And I love seeing you. I love seeing you take care of yourself. I love seeing you grow and evolve. I can't wait. I do get all these. I'm coming back to the water bottle. I get so many of these. If I could show you my pantry, how many I get and a lot of times I end up throwing them away. I'm going to take this one, and this is, I love black, I love green, I love the whole essence you've got here. But I'm going to start using this, and I'm going to think of you and send you gratitude and intention for great success every time I work out. I'm going to commit to use my McKinney water bottle, and I'm just so grateful for you to be able to come in today and share your gifts with me and with our audience. There's a lot more you can learn about Willie in the book. There's a lot more about gratitude. On our next episode going in, we go further into gratitude, because I got a few things on there, and I gotta look at my notes here. We're gonna move actually next into our next episode is the 5 prompts for finding gratitude. And Willie, you may or may not remember those, but in the book I've put those together to help people realize it's not just I'm grateful for my car, my dog, my life. It's the prompts to really say, today I smiled when.
Yeah.
And so as we leave the audience, I have 2 questions for you. The first is, if you were to answer a gratitude prompt, and that's one of my favorites, today I smiled when? What would your answer be?
Well, I smiled when I saw Yedda. I haven't seen her in a while.
Willie, that's going to be my answer. Today I smiled when I saw Willie. And I love that you are here, you're smiling, you're with us, and your presence is here. My next question, and we wrap this up with the guest, is as you think about the work you've done, where we're at, the people that are watching, listening, they're going into this, wherever they're at on their journey, What words of wisdom would you leave with our listeners and our viewers?
Boy, I would say that I've benefited tremendously from this journey. And even though Yedda wouldn't tell me what she does, I decided to go on the journey. And I think it's one of the best decisions that I ever made. I don't practice as often as I should, but the essence of the journey and what I learned, I practice on a regular basis.
Yeah, it's a part of who you are.
Exactly now. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I am so grateful that you've been on the journey with me, and we've all been helping each other, that you're now out in the world and you're spreading that gratitude. And again, you guys can learn more in the chapter, and you can come back on the next episode. We'll dig into a little bit more of some of the things that I teach people about how to really cultivate those prompts for finding things, even in your deepest suffering, that you can be grateful for. Willie, I am so grateful for you. I have a heart overflowing full of love and gratitude. So thank you, my friend, for being here with us today.
Thank you for inviting me. We have to do lunch soon.
Absolutely. No workouts, though. I'm done with that. I'm not doing any more planks. So I'll see you all on the next episode. We'll have Willie come back for lots of other stuff. I've got a whole other series of online courses, Willie, I'm digging into next on that stand up and speak and lead and that justice, equity, diversity, inclusion conversation. And it's an invitation to invite all of you to do the work, and literally open your palm, open your heart and your mind to who am I, what do I believe, and how can I go within and cultivate a belief system that can hold multiple beliefs at the same time. That's the power of this work. If we could live in that place, our whole world would change and we would create a completely grateful globe. And I'm so glad that you guys are a part of this journey with us, and we'll see you on the next episode. Until then, have a great day and take care.
May you know goodness, may you know peace, may you know contentment, may you be